Just sign it, Preston. You are single, you do not need all this space. My mom screamed those words at me, her face flushed red with unearned righteous anger, as she shoved the printed deed transfer papers directly into my chest. We were standing in the custom kitchen of the home I bought, the home I worked 70-hour weeks to afford, and she was demanding I sign my life away. Sign it to your brother, she yelled, her voice echoing off the expensive quartz countertops I paid for. His baby needs it. You can just rent a small apartment downtown. It was the ultimate betrayal. I pay the $4,500 mortgage every single month. I pay for every ounce of food they consume. I keep the lights on and the water running. And here she was, demanding I hand over my $950,000 house to the golden boy who never worked a hard day in his entire 28 years of life. The anger that hit me in that moment was blinding, like staring directly into the sun, but I did not snap. I did something much, much worse. Let me rewind and explain exactly how my life turned into this surreal nightmare. About a year ago, my reality actually seemed pretty fantastic. I am 26 years old. I work as a senior software engineer, and I hustled relentlessly to get where I am. I saved every single penny, lived like a broke college student eating instant ramen even when I started making a six-figure salary, and finally closed on my absolute dream home. It is a stunning property worth $950,000, located in a quiet, highly sought-after suburban neighborhood. It boasts 4 large bedrooms, 3 full bathrooms, a massive landscaped backyard, and a kitchen that looks like it belongs in an architectural magazine. I was fiercely proud of it. It was the physical proof that all my suffering had paid off. Around that time, my parents, Warren and Rowena, started dropping heavy hints about how difficult retirement was getting for them in their old, drafty house out in the rural countryside. They complained about the stairs, the yard work, and being so far from the city amenities. I figured, I have the space, I have the financial means, why not let them move in with me? I told them they could live with me rent-free. I cover the massive monthly mortgage without breaking a sweat, and I throw down about $800 a month on premium groceries just to keep the fridge stocked. They did not have to pay a single dime toward bills, property taxes, or maintenance. I thought I was doing the noble thing. I thought this was what a successful, loving son was supposed to do. But looking back with 20/20 vision, I realized I was just building a luxurious golden cage for myself and locking the door from the inside. You have to understand the dynamic of my family. I have always been the invisible child, the ghost in the background. Everything in our universe revolved entirely around my older brother, Corbin. Corbin is the textbook definition of a golden child who never actually achieved anything worthy of praise. He is the guy who always has a grand, get-rich-quick scheme that inevitably falls apart in 2 weeks. He is the guy who expects the universe to hand him a trophy just for waking up in the morning. And my parents? They gave him the entire world on a silver platter while tossing me the scraps. I remember my college graduation day like it was yesterday. The memory still burns. I was the first person in our entire extended family to get a degree in engineering. I graduated in the top 5% of my class. My parents promised for months that they would be there to watch me walk across the stage and accept my diploma. I was sitting there in the blistering heat in my cap and gown, scanning the massive crowd, desperately waiting to see their faces. They never showed up. Why? Because the night before, Corbin got arrested for driving under the influence. Instead of coming to my once-in-a-lifetime graduation, my parents spent the entire day sitting at the police station and the defense lawyers' office, draining their accounts to bail him out and coddling him through his hangover. When I finally got back to their house, diploma clutched in my hand, my mom just looked at me with exhausted annoyance and said, "Preston, we are dealing with a real family crisis right now. Put that piece of paper away." That was it. No congratulations. No dinner. Nothing. Then there was the issue of my college tuition. I paid for my entire degree by myself. I worked 3 brutal jobs simultaneously. I flipped greasy burgers until midnight, tutored struggling math students on weekends, and worked overnight security shifts at a warehouse just to avoid taking out massive, crippling student loans. I functioned on 4 hours of sleep for 4 straight years. Meanwhile, Corbin decided he wanted to start an elite landscaping business. My parents dipped deeply into their fragile retirement savings and bought him a $30,000 brand new heavy-duty truck. 3 months later, he wrapped it around a telephone pole because he was texting a girl. The business never even got a single client. My parents just sighed, hugged him, and said, "Well, he is trying his very best. The world is just hard on him." When I dared to bring up how unfair it was that I was drowning in work while they bought him a truck, they scolded me, calling me jealous, petty, and unsupportive. Even now, with me owning this massive estate and fully supporting their retirement, they never respected what I did for a living. They constantly belittled my career to anyone who would listen. "Oh, Preston just sits in a comfy chair and clicks little buttons all day," my dad, Warren, would boast to his friends on the phone, his voice dripping with condescension. He does not know what real, back-breaking labor is like. I just swallowed my pride, gritted my teeth, and kept paying their bills. But the fragile peace shattered on a random Tuesday night. We were sitting at the dining room table. I had just finished a grueling 12-hour shift pushing a massive code release for my company. I was mentally drained. Out of nowhere, my mom puts her fork down, wipes her mouth, and looks at me with this casual, expectant expression. "Corbin and Sloan are moving in," she announced. It was not a question. It was not a request. It was a royal decree. Sloan is Corbin's 26-year-old wife. She is currently pregnant, and they are struggling financially. My mom continued without missing a beat. "They need our support right now, so they will be taking the 2 guest rooms starting this weekend." I just stared at her, my fork halfway to my mouth, my mind totally blank. "Moving in?" I asked, my voice tight and strained. "Mom, this is my house. You cannot just invite people to live here without even running it by me first." My dad slammed his heavy hand down on the solid oak table, making the silverware rattle. "We are family, Preston," he barked, his face turning red. "Your brother needs help. Are you really going to be the kind of monster who throws your pregnant sister-in-law out on the cold street?" I did not know what to say. I was too exhausted to fight a losing battle, and I foolishly figured they would stay for maybe a week or 2 until they found a cheap apartment. I nodded slowly, rubbing my temples, not realizing that I had just handed them the keys to destroy my peace and take over my life. Fan 2: The Invasion begins 1400. They arrived early on a Saturday morning, and let me tell you, they did not pack light. Corbin and Sloan rolled up to my driveway in a beat-up sedan filled to the brim. They had 6 massive, heavy suitcases, 5 oversized cardboard boxes, and a whole attitude problem that permeated the air the second they stepped out of the car. I was standing on the front porch, drinking my morning coffee, trying my hardest to be polite and welcoming. Sloan waddled past me, not even offering a basic hello or a thank you. She stepped straight into my grand foyer, looked around at the expensive decor, and immediately wrinkled her nose in disgust. "The lighting in this hallway is dreadfully harsh," she announced to no one in particular, her voice echoing. "And that rug is entirely the wrong shade of blue. Clashes with my aura. I cannot have bad energy around the baby." I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted copper. They aggressively moved into the 2 spare bedrooms on the 2nd floor. One room was for them to sleep in, and the other was instantly designated for the mountain of baby stuff they had already started hoarding. Within 48 hours, my house did not feel like my house anymore. It felt like I was an unwanted guest in a hostile hotel. Sloan acted like she was the reigning queen of a castle she did not pay a single penny for. She loudly complained about the temperature being too cold. She criticized the brand of recycled toilet paper I bought, and she threw a fit because I left my leatherwork shoes by the front door where I always leave them. But the first real, blood-boiling incident happened on Tuesday morning. I am a bit of a coffee snob. I admit it. It is my one daily luxury. I buy these specific, high-end imported coffee beans from a local roaster that cost about $50 a bag. I went into the kitchen at 6 in the morning, exhausted, ready to meticulously brew my coffee before a massive virtual meeting with my team. I reached into the pantry where I always keep my airtight container, but my beans were gone. The shelf was totally bare. I looked everywhere. I checked the counters, the cabinets, even the fridge. Finally, I opened the stainless steel trash can, and my heart sank. There they were, my $50 beans, dumped straight into the garbage, mixed with leftover tomato sauce, soggy pasta, and cracked eggshells. Sloane walked into the kitchen right at that moment, wearing a silk robe, casually rubbing her small belly. "Oh, I threw those out," she said, not looking even slightly apologetic. She actually looked proud of herself. The smell was making me incredibly nauseous. "You will have to start buying instant coffee from now on. That dark roast is toxic for the baby's development anyway." I stared down at the ruined beans in the trash can, feeling my blood pressure skyrocket to dangerous levels. "You threw away $50 worth of my premium coffee because of the smell?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Sloane, you could have just put it in a sealed Ziploc bag, or asked me to move it. You do not just throw away other people's expensive property." My mom rushed into the kitchen, clearly hearing my raised voice and ready to play referee for her precious daughter-in-law. "Preston, lower your voice this instant," she scolded, pointing a finger at me. "Sloane is creating a literal miracle in there. Her senses are very sensitive right now. You need to step up and make some sacrifices. It is just coffee. Stop being so dramatic. Just coffee. Just my house. Just my money." It was never just anything. It was the glaring fact that I was expected to constantly shrink myself so their massive egos could expand. Have you ever had someone walk into your home, the home you bleed and sweat and sacrifice to pay for, and treat you like the hired help? Let me know in the comments below, because I felt like I was slowly losing my grip on sanity. Things only escalated rapidly from there. Corbin spent his days sitting on my custom leather couch, playing loud video games for 8 hours straight, and leaving empty potato chip bags and soda cans all over the hardwood floor. When I firmly asked him to clean up his mess, he laughed in my face, tossed a controller onto the cushion, and said, "Relax, little brother, the maid will get it later." We did not have a maid. He meant me, or our aging mom. I tried my best to escape the madness by diving into my work. Since I work from home about 80% of the time, my home office is my ultimate sanctuary. I spent $3,000 out of my own pocket meticulously setting it up. I have a custom ergonomic chair, dual curved high-definition monitors, soundproof acoustic panels on the walls, and a mechanical keyboard. It was the only room in the entire house where I could lock the heavy wooden door, block out the noise, and actually breathe. One afternoon, our internet router started acting up, dropping my connection during a crucial coding session. I had no choice but to run to a local coffee shop a few miles away to use their reliable internet. I was gone for maybe 2.5 hours, just enough time to finish my task and drive back. When I pulled my car back into my own driveway, I felt this strange, heavy knot of dread form in my stomach. The front door was slightly ajar. I walked inside, heading straight up the stairs to my office to finish my shift. As I turned the corner into the carpeted hallway, I froze. My legs stopped working. My $3,000 custom desk chair was sitting in the middle of the hallway. Next to it was a chaotic pile of tangled power cables, and my expensive dual monitors were just resting carelessly on the bare hardwood floor, the screens facing down. My heart hammered aggressively against my ribs. I practically ran to the office door. It was wide open. Inside, Corbin was standing there in his socks with a metal tape measure, while Sloane was pointing authoritatively at the corner where my desk used to be. "This bulky desk has to go to the dump today," Sloane was dictating to him. "We need to paint these walls a soft, calming sage green. The Zen nursery space needs to be ready by next month, and this room has the best natural morning light." I stood in the doorway, staring at the empty space where my livelihood used to be, my hands balling into tight fists. The invasion was not just starting. It was already a full-blown occupation. "Fan 3, the ultimatum 1400, what the hell are you doing?" My voice was dangerously low, vibrating with a rage I had never felt before in my life. Corbin and Sloane casually turned around. Neither of them looked even remotely guilty. In fact, Sloane looked deeply annoyed that I was interrupting her grand interior design moment. "We are making room for the baby's Zen space," Sloane said, crossing her arms over her chest defensively. The other spare room down the hall is way too small for all the expensive gifts we are getting from my friends, and it does not have good natural light. You do not really need a whole giant room just to type on a keyboard, Preston. You can set your little laptop up in the living room corner. I stepped fully into the room, my hands shaking uncontrollably. You dismantled and moved my $3,000 work equipment without asking me? In my own house? I marched over to Corbin, getting right in his face, not caring that he was 2 inches taller than me. Put my stuff back together. Right now. Corbin scoffed, rolling his eyes, and took a step back. Chill out, man. Do not blow a gasket. It is for the baby. Mom already said it was perfectly fine for us to take this room. Of course she did. The rage shifted from my brother to my parents. I turned on my heel and stomped heavily down the wooden stairs. Mom! I yelled, my voice echoing through the entire house. Both my parents were in the kitchen. I had just spent $400 on groceries the day before, intentionally stocking the fridge with premium cuts of steak, fresh organic produce, and all the specific snacks Sloane demanded for her cravings. The rich smell of roasted garlic, butter, and searing steak filled the air. My mom looked up from the stove holding a spatula. Preston, do not yell in this house, she scolded, furrowing her brow. It is bad for the baby's stress levels. Did you tell them they could completely dismantle my office? I demanded, ignoring her warning. My dad stepped forward, puffing out his chest and crossing his thick arms. We decided as a family that the baby needs a proper, spacious nursery. You are just one single guy, Preston. You do not need a massive office all to yourself. You need to learn to share and compromise. I was seething. The audacity was suffocating. I pay the mortgage, I yelled, pointing at the floor. I pay for the expensive food you are cooking right now. You do not get to unilaterally give away my rooms. Dinner was served 20 tense minutes later. I sat at the long dining table, fuming, waiting for anyone, to apologize or at least acknowledge they overstepped. My mom brought out a massive, beautiful ceramic platter of perfectly cooked steak and seasoned roasted potatoes. She happily served Corbin a huge, heaping portion. She served Sloane. She served my dad. Then, she casually sat down in her chair. I looked at the center of the table. The platter was totally empty. I looked down at my place setting. There was no plate, just an empty placemat and silverware. I stared blankly at my mom. Are you kidding me right now? I asked, my voice trembling. My dad meticulously cut his steak, not even bothering to make eye contact with me. Family provides for family, Preston, he said coldly, chewing his food. If you do not want to act like a supportive brother and uncle, you do not get to eat the family meal with us. I let out a harsh, bitter laugh. I bought that steak. I bought the plates you are eating on. I bought this table. That is when the plot twist happened. The exact moment that permanently shattered whatever fragile illusion of family loyalty I still held onto. My mom wiped her mouth delicately with a cloth napkin, reached into her leather tote bag sitting on the floor next to her chair, and pulled out a thick manila folder. She slapped it down onto the wooden table right in front of me with a loud smack. We are incredibly tired of you holding this house over our heads, she said, her voice dripping with pure disdain. You are selfish, Preston. You always have been. Corbin has a real family to support now. He needs actual stability. I slowly opened the folder. Inside was a pristine, officially drafted deed transfer document. It was fully filled out with all the legal jargon. It explicitly stated that I, Preston, would irrevocably transfer the full ownership of my $950,000 property to Corbin, for the grand sum of $0. I read the heavy black text 3 times, my brain completely refusing to process the sheer, unadulterated audacity of what I was holding. You want me to give Corbin my house? I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Yes, my mom said, leaning forward aggressively. You are single. You make very good money at that computer job. You can just go rent a small apartment downtown. Sloane needs deep security for the baby. Just sign it, Preston. We can go to the public notary tomorrow morning. Corbin was sitting there, actively smirking around a mouthful of the steak I paid for. It makes the most logical sense, bro. I am the true man of the house now that I am starting a real family. You just do not need all this space. They were dead serious. They actually genuinely believed I was going to hand over a near $1 million asset just because my mom aggressively told me to. The rage inside me boiled over the edge, but suddenly, the burning heat vanished. It was instantly replaced by a cold, calculating, terrifying clarity. If I screamed now, if I flipped the table, I would lose the upper hand. I had to play their twisted game. I slowly closed the manila folder. I picked it up, making sure my face was completely blank, devoid of any emotion. I need to read the fine print first, I said softly. I turned around, walked up the stairs, went into my bedroom, and locked the heavy door behind me. Fan for the secret preparation 1400, the second the brass lock clicked into place. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. My hands were trembling so violently I could barely swipe to unlock the screen. I immediately called Desmond. Desmond has been my fiercely loyal best friend since middle school. He knows every single dark detail about my toxic family dynamics. He answered on the second ring, hearing the heavy breathing on my end. Bro, what is wrong? You sound like you are literally suffocating. I paced the floor and told him everything. The destroyed office, the stolen steak dinner, the insane deed transfer document sitting on my bed. By the time I finished venting, Desmond was dead. Silent for a long, agonizing moment. Finally, he spoke, and his voice was ice-cold and dead serious. Preston, you are living with literal parasites. You need to get them out. All of them. Call a ruthless lawyer right now. Do not warn them. Do not argue with them anymore. Just strike. Hearing someone else on the outside validate my warped reality felt like taking a deep, desperate breath of air after being held underwater for months. I was not crazy. They were toxic, entitled, and dangerous to my future. The very next morning, I dressed in a sharp suit and told my parents I had to go into the corporate office for a massive emergency meeting. I casually mentioned that I would carefully look over the deed papers on my lunch break. My mom beamed at me, a sickeningly sweet smile on her face, fully believing she had won the war. Take your time, sweetie, she cooed, pouring me a cup of the cheap, bitter instant coffee she bought to replace my good beans. I did not go anywhere near my tech job. I drove straight downtown to the sleek, glass-paneled office of Mr. Harrison, a veteran real estate and eviction lawyer that Desmond highly recommended. Mr. Harrison was a sharp, no-nonsense guy in his late 60s who wore a tailored suit and did not mince words. I sat in his plush leather chair, laid out the absurd deed transfer paper my mom gave me, and explained the entire living situation in excruciating detail. Mr. Harrison picked up the deed paper, read it, and actually laughed out loud. This is straight-up extortion disguised as family bonding, he said, tossing the paper directly into his trash can. Let us get these ridiculous people out of your house immediately. He explained the strict local housing laws to me clearly. Because Corbin and Sloan did not pay a single cent of rent and had not established long-term legal residency, they were legally considered unauthorized guests. Depending on local statutes, I could have them out in 24 hours with a police escort if they refused to leave voluntarily. My parents, however, had been living there for a full year. Even though they did not pay rent, they were considered month-to-month tenants by default in the eyes of the court. They required a formal, legal 30-day eviction notice. Draft them both right now, I said, not hesitating for a single second. My heart was pounding with adrenaline. We printed the official, legally binding notices. One 24-hour notice to quit for Corbin and Sloan. One 30-day notice to vacate for Warren and Rowena. They were stamped, official, and terrifyingly real. I put them carefully into a thick manila envelope and slid it into my leather briefcase. On my tense drive home, my phone started blowing up on the dashboard. It was my Aunt Gemma. Gemma is my mom's sister and the ultimate flying monkey of the family. If my mom is the manipulative queen bee, Gemma is the loud, aggressive soldier who executes her dirty work. I let it go to voicemail twice, but she called back a third time. Finally, I hit accept. Preston, what is wrong with you? Gemma shrieked into the phone before I even said a word. Your mother told me you are hesitating on signing the house over to Corbin. Are you really that greedy and selfish? Your brother is bringing an innocent child into this world. If you do not sign that paper by tonight, the entire family will disown you. You will not be welcome at Thanksgiving, Christmas, or even my funeral. I let her scream and rant for a solid 2 minutes, gripping the steering wheel. When she finally paused to take a breath, I just calmly said, "I will take care of the house situation tonight, Gemma." Then I hung up the phone and permanently blocked her number. I pulled my car into my driveway. The house looked so peaceful from the outside, with its manicured lawn and big windows, but I knew it was a hostile war zone on the inside. I grabbed my briefcase, took a deep, steadying breath, and walked boldly through the front door. The moment I stepped inside the foyer, I heard heavy shuffling and dragging sounds coming from upstairs. I walked up to the second floor and stopped dead in my tracks, my blood running cold. The heavy oak door to my master bedroom, the room I slept in every single night, was wide open. Corbin was inside, using a tape measure on the wall above my expensive bed frame. My clothes, my personal belongings, the framed photos off my nightstand, were all shoved haphazardly into cheap, heavy black trash bags sitting in a pile in the hallway. Fan 5 the boiling point 1440 I stood there, frozen, staring at the black trash bags. They looked like body bags for my dignity. All my hard work, my personal space, my life, reduced to garbage by the brother who never earned a thing. Corbin finally noticed me standing in the doorway. He did not even flinch. He did not look caught. "Oh, hey man," he said casually, reeling the metal tape measure back in with a loud snap. "Sloane and I were talking things over. Even if you give us the house deed, the guest room is just way too small for the master crib she ordered from that boutique. We are officially taking the master bedroom starting tonight. You can take the smaller guest room down the hall. I already packed all your stuff up for you." He casually kicked one of the heavy black trash bags with his foot, causing a framed photo of me and Desmond to clatter loudly inside. Every single muscle in my body tensed so hard they ached. My vision actually blurred at the edges with red-hot fury. "Get out of my room," I said, my voice eerily calm, stripping away all the panic. Corbin smirked, clearly enjoying the power trip. He casually walked over to my custom nightstand where I had left a tall glass of expensive, dark organic cranberry juice I had brought up the night before. He picked the glass up, swirling the dark red liquid. "Come on, Preston. Do not be a giant baby about this. Mom already said you are giving us the house anyway. Just accept the fact that I am the main priority now." He looked me dead in the eye, maintaining intense eye contact, and with a slow, lazy flick of his wrist, he tipped the glass. The dark red juice poured out in a thick stream, splashing directly onto the vintage, white Persian rug I had bought in Turkey for $2,000. The red stain bloomed rapidly like fresh blood on the pristine white fabric, ruining it instantly. "Oops," Corbin said, his smirk widening into a full, nasty grin. "Guess you will have to clean that huge mess up before you move your stuff downstairs." He stepped closer to me, puffing out his chest aggressively. He was intentionally trying to provoke me. He wanted me to lose control and throw a punch. I knew exactly how this played out. If I hit him, he would immediately call the cops, dramatically claim assault on a future father, and I would be the one dragged out of my own expensive house in handcuffs. I could see the malicious calculation in his lazy eyes. He desperately wanted to play the ultimate victim. I looked down at the massive red stain ruining my favorite rug. I looked at the pathetic black trash bags holding my life. Then, I looked right back up at my brother. I did not raise my voice. I did not clench my fists or lunge at him. I just smiled. It was a cold, empty, terrifying smile that made Corbin's smug smirk falter for a split second. "You have absolutely no idea what you have just done," I whispered, my tone devoid of any brotherly warmth. I turned around, leaving him standing awkwardly in the ruined room, and walked slowly down the stairs. Every step felt heavy, like I was marching toward a final execution. I went straight to my leather briefcase sitting by the front door. I unzipped the main compartment and pulled out the thick manila envelope Mr. Harrison had given me just hours ago. The legal paper felt heavy and powerful in my hands. felt like pure, unfiltered justice. If you are still watching this, hit that like button right now because the brutal revenge you are about to see unfold is going to be incredibly satisfying. You do not want to miss exactly how I finally took my life back. I walked purposefully into the massive living room. My parents were sitting comfortably on the expensive leather couch, happily watching a game show on the 70-inch flat-screen TV I bought them for Christmas. Sloane was sitting in my favorite armchair, scrolling mindlessly on her phone, dramatically rubbing her belly. "Mom, Dad, Sloane." I spoke loudly, my voice cutting sharply through the annoying noise of the television. "Can you call Corbin down here right now? We need to talk about the house." My mom's face lit up with pure joy. She practically jumped off the couch. "Oh, finally." She clapped her hands together in excitement. "Warren, pause the TV right now. Preston is finally ready to do the right thing for our family." She hurried over to the bottom of the stairs. "Corbin, get down here right this second. Your brother is ready to sign the papers." A minute later, Corbin swaggered cockily down the stairs, looking incredibly smug. He walked over and stood right next to Sloane, wrapping a protective arm around her shoulder. He gave me a knowing, condescending nod, like he had successfully bullied me into total submission. My mom rushed over to the glass coffee table. She pulled a fancy, expensive gold pen out of her purse and placed it delicately next to the deed transfer document she had left out from yesterday. "Here you go, sweetie," she said, her voice dripping with fake, sickening affection. "Just sign right here at the bottom line, and we can all go back to being a happy, supportive family." I looked at the shiny gold pen. I looked at the ridiculous deed transfer. Then, I looked at the 4 people standing in my living room, looking at me like I was nothing more than a human ATM, an annoying obstacle they had finally conquered and broken. I did not pick up the pen. Instead, I raised the thick envelope in my hand. "Actually," I said, my voice ringing clear and loud in the sudden quiet of the room, "I brought my own paperwork." I slowly opened the envelope. I stood perfectly still in the center of my massive, custom-designed living room, holding the thick manila envelope tightly in my right hand. The room was entirely dead silent, save for the faint, annoying jingle of the television game show that my dad had paused on the 70-inch flat screen. The glowing light from the TV cast long, strange shadows across the expensive hardwood floors that I spent months picking out. My mother, Rowena, was practically vibrating with nervous excitement on the leather couch. Her eyes were glued to the envelope, fully believing that I had finally caved to her endless, suffocating manipulation. She actually reached her hand out across the glass coffee table, gesturing for me to hand her the papers so she could guide my hand to the signature line like I was a stubborn, ignorant child who did not know what was best for him. Corbin stood next to Sloane, his chest puffed out in that ridiculous, arrogant way he always adopted when he thought he had one. He was wearing a smug, victorious grin that made my stomach churn with disgust. He honestly thought he had broken my spirit. He thought all his relentless bullying, the intentionally ruined $2,000 Persian rug, the aggressively dismantled $3,000 home office, and the constant belittling had finally worked. Sloane was sitting there, gently rubbing her pregnant belly, looking around the room as if she was already mentally redecorating the walls and picking out new furniture with my hard-earned money. They were all so confident, so blinded by their own entitlement, that they did not even notice the cold, dead look in my eyes. For a brief, fleeting second, my mind flashed back to every single time I had backed down in the past. I remembered handing over my savings when Corbin needed bail money. I remembered giving up my weekends to fix his broken-down cars. I remembered sitting alone in my dorm room on my college graduation day, staring at the wall, while they threw a party to celebrate Corbin finishing a court-mandated rehab program that he immediately failed out of anyway. They had trained me for 26 years to be the ultimate sacrificial lamb. But standing there, feeling the heavy weight of the legal documents in my hands, I knew the cycle was permanently shattered. I did not hand the envelope to my mother. Instead, I slowly, deliberately untied the little string closure wrapped around the top. I reached inside and pulled out the crisp, heavy stock legal documents that Mr. Harrison had meticulously drafted for me just a few hours ago downtown. The papers did not look anything like a standard real estate transfer form. They had a bold, intimidating red stamp from a prestigious law firm at the very top, and the text was large, aggressive, and undeniably official. I took one step forward and placed the documents right on top of the blank, pathetic deed transfer they had tried to force on me the night before. I slapped the stack of papers down onto the glass coffee table with a loud, sharp smack that made my mother flinch backward. "There you go," I said, my voice steady, deep, and devoid of any familial warmth. "That is my paperwork. Read it carefully." My mom leaned forward, her brow furrowing in genuine confusion. She picked up the fancy gold pen again, fully expecting to see blank lines for a public notary and my signature. Instead, her eyes slowly scanned the bold, black header at the top of the first page. I watched, filled with a dark, twisting sense of satisfaction, the exact second her brain processed the legal words. The sickeningly sweet, fake smile melted right off her face, instantly replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated shock. The healthy color drained rapidly from her cheeks, leaving her looking pale, sick, and suddenly very old. "What is this?" she stammered, her hands starting to visibly shake, causing the paper to rattle in the quiet room. "Preston, this is not the property deed transfer." Corbin let out a loud, dramatic sigh of annoyance, rolling his lazy eyes at the ceiling. He stepped away from Sloane, walked over to the coffee table, and aggressively snatched the papers right out of our mother's trembling hands. "Stop playing your stupid little games, man," Corbin muttered, glaring at me. "Just sign the stupid paper so we can get on with our lives." His voice died instantly in his throat. His eyes widened to the size of saucers as he read the heavy black text. He read it once. Then he read it again, his lips moving silently as he struggled to comprehend the harsh legal jargon staring back at him. "Notice to quit," Corbin read aloud, his voice cracking slightly, losing all of its fake bravado. "Unauthorized guest. 24 hours to vacate the premises immediately." He looked up at me, his smug expression entirely gone, replaced by genuine, panicked confusion. "Are you serious right now?" he asked, holding the paper up in the air like it was a venomous snake. "Is this some kind of sick, twisted joke? You went downtown and printed a fake eviction notice to scare us?" I crossed my arms tightly over my chest, standing tall and immovable in the center of my own home. "It is not a joke, and it is definitely not fake," I replied, staring a hole right through his cowardly eyes. "That official document was drafted, signed, and stamped by a senior real estate attorney downtown just a few hours ago. You wanted my master bedroom so badly? You thought you could throw my expensive belongings into trash bags and claim my territory? Well, now you will have to go find a master bedroom somewhere else. You have exactly 24 hours to pack up your 6 massive suitcases, gather all your hoarded baby junk, and get out of my house." Sloane let out a loud, theatrical gasp, clutching her stomach defensively as if I had physically struck her across the face. "You cannot do this," she shrieked, her voice echoing shrilly off the high ceilings, piercing my eardrums. "I am a pregnant woman. We are having a baby. The extreme stress you are causing me right now is dangerous for the child. You are a monster." I did not even bother looking at her. My eyes remained dead locked on Corbin, who was physically shrinking under my gaze. "I am done," I said, my tone leaving zero room for debate or negotiation. "You have freeloaded in this expensive house. You have deeply disrespected my personal property. You threw my vital work equipment onto the floor, and you intentionally ruined a $2,000 vintage rug just to show off your pathetic ego. You pushed me way past my breaking point, and now you finally get to face the real, unforgiving world." My dad, Warren, who had been sitting quietly on the couch this entire time processing the situation, suddenly erupted like a dormant volcano. He jumped to his feet, his face turning an angry, dangerous shade of purple. He lunged forward, ripped the legal documents right out of Corbin's hands, and crumpled them into a tight, angry ball, throwing them violently onto the floor. You listen to me right now, you disrespectful brat. My dad roared, pointing a thick, calloused finger directly in my face, invading my personal space. You cannot just throw your own flesh and blood out onto the cold street. We are a family. We are not going anywhere. This is our home too, and you will not treat your older brother like some common street criminal. I looked calmly down at the crumpled legal paper resting on the hardwood floor, then looked slowly back up at my furious father. My heart was not racing. I felt no fear, no intimidation, no guilt. I only felt a deep, profound sense of pity for how entirely delusional they all were. They truly believed they held the power in a house they did not own. I smiled. It was a dark, hollow, terrifying smile that caused my dad to instinctively take half a step back. I thought you might say that, I said softly, my voice cutting through his rage. Right on cue, as if the universe was operating on my exact script. 3 heavy, loud, authoritative knocks pounded against the thick oak wood of my front door. The heavy sound echoed through the tense living room like a gunshot, freezing everyone in their tracks. Fan 7. The enforcers arrive 1460. The heavy knocking made every single person in the room freeze as if time had suddenly stopped. My dad slowly lowered his pointing finger, his angry, purple expression shifting rapidly into one of nervous, cowardly hesitation. My mom clutched her fake pearl necklace tightly, taking a stumbling step backward until her knees hit the edge of the leather couch. Corbin and Sloane exchanged wild, panicked glances, the reality of the situation finally beginning to penetrate their thick skulls. Who is that at this hour? My mom whispered, her voice trembling so badly it was barely audible. I did not answer her question. I turned my back to my shocked family, walked calmly and purposefully across the grand foyer, and unlocked the heavy front door, pulling it wide open to the cool night air. Standing on my front porch, illuminated by the bright outdoor security lights, were 2 uniformed city police officers. They were tall, heavily built, and wore expressions of absolute, intimidating professional stoicism. Earlier that evening, while I was sitting in my car in the driveway mentally preparing for this war, I had called the non-emergency police dispatch line. I explained clearly to the operator that I was serving a hostile eviction notice to unauthorized occupants who had a documented history of escalating situations, verbal abuse, and intentionally damaging my expensive property. I formally requested a civil standby to ensure my physical safety and to prevent them from destroying the house in a fit of rage on their way out. Good evening, officers, I said politely, stepping aside to let the bright glow of the porch light catch the reflection of their silver badges. I am Preston. I am the sole homeowner of this property. I called dispatch earlier regarding the civil standby for a hostile eviction. The older, broad-shouldered officer nodded slowly, resting a hand casually on his heavy-duty belt. Good evening, sir. We are just here to keep the peace and ensure everything goes smoothly without any violence. Are the unauthorized guests currently inside the premises? Yes, they are right inside the living room, I replied, gesturing toward the open space where my family was standing frozen in terror. The moment the 2 heavily armed officers stepped over the threshold and into the foyer, the entire dynamic in the room shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The false bravado, the endless entitlement, the aggressive yelling. It all evaporated instantly into thin air. Corbin physically shrank in upon himself. The big, tough older brother who was ready to physically fight me over a ruined rug just an hour ago suddenly looked like a terrified middle schooler caught stealing candy from a convenience store. He took 3 massive, clumsy steps away from me, pressing his back flat against the painted wall. My dad, who had just been roaring in my face about family loyalty and threatening me, sat back down on the leather couch very slowly, keeping his hands wide open and clearly visible on his knees, terrified of making a wrong move. The officers walked purposefully into the center of the living room, their heavy black boots thudding loudly against the hardwood floor. Which specific individuals are being asked to leave the property tonight? The younger officer asked, his stern eyes sweeping over the group before looking directly at me. I pointed a firm, unwavering finger straight at Corbin and Sloane. Those 2, I said loudly, ensuring my voice carried. They do not pay rent. They are not on any lease agreement. They do not contribute financially to this household. I served them a legal 24-hour notice to quit, drafted by my attorney, and my father just crumpled it up and loudly declared they were refusing to leave. I want it on official police record right now that they have until this exact time tomorrow evening to remove themselves and all their belongings from my property, or I will be pressing formal criminal trespassing charges against both of them. Sloane instantly burst into loud, theatrical, sobbing tears. She aggressively pushed her stomach out, arching her back, desperately trying to look as frail and victimized as humanly possible. "Officers, please," she wailed, wiping fake, invisible tears from her flushed cheeks. "You cannot possibly let him do this to us. I am a highly pregnant woman. He is violently throwing a pregnant woman and an unborn, innocent child onto the cold, dangerous streets. We have zero money and nowhere else to go." The older officer looked at her, his rugged expression utterly unmoved by her dramatic performance. "Ma'am, pregnancy does not grant you legal tenancy or squatter's rights in a private home you do not own or pay for," he stated flatly. "If the legal homeowner wants you out of the dwelling, and you have no legal lease or written proof of paid rent, you are legally considered to be trespassing. You have 24 hours to pack your belongings and vacate the premises peacefully. If dispatch gets called back here tomorrow night and you are still inside this building, you will both be escorted out of here in handcuffs and placed in the back of a squad car. Do you understand the law?" Sloane's mouth fell wide open in pure, unadulterated shock. The fake, theatrical tears instantly stopped flowing. She looked desperately at Corbin, fully expecting him to step up, argue with the cops, and defend her honor like a man. But Corbin was staring intently at his own shoes. He was far too cowardly to even make eye contact with the police officers. My mom started crying for real, burying her face in her hands. "Preston, how could you be so incredibly cruel?" she sobbed, her voice muffled. "We are your family. We raised you from a baby. We supported you your whole life." I turned my attention to the officers. "Can I speak freely for a moment to clarify the situation?" The older officer nodded, crossing his arms. "Go ahead, sir. You have the floor." I looked right at my parents and my brother, making sure the cops heard every single brutal word. "Supported me?" I asked, my voice rising in volume, fueled by decades of repressed anger and neglect. "Let us talk about real numbers for a second. Let us talk about facts. I spent $45,000 out of my own pocket supporting this family in the last 12 months alone. My monthly mortgage is $4,500, which I pay entirely by myself. I spend $800 a month on premium groceries that you people eat without ever saying a single word of thanks. Meanwhile, Corbin has not held a steady, paying job in 3 full years. He totals expensive cars that I did not buy, and you fiercely demand that I hand over a $950,000 property deed to him just because I am single and his wife needs a Zen nursery?" The younger officer raised his eyebrows, turning his head to look at Corbin with visible, undeniable disgust. "I am done being your personal bank," I continued, my chest heaving with adrenaline. "I am done being the invisible ATM. I am done being treated like garbage in the house I bought." Corbin finally found his voice, though it was incredibly weak and pathetic. "Fine," he muttered, grabbing Sloane aggressively by the arm and pulling her toward the stairs. "We will leave right now. We do not need your toxic, negative energy anyway. Come on, Sloane. We are packing our bags tonight." They practically ran up the wooden stairs, desperate to escape the intimidating, judgmental presence of the police. The officers stayed in the foyer for the next 2 agonizing hours, standing like immovable stone statues while Corbin and Sloane frantically shoved their clothes, shoes, and hoarded baby gear into their massive suitcases. They dragged their heavy bags down the stairs, struggling with the immense weight, accidentally scratching the hardwood floors in their blind panic. They did not say a single word to me, nor did they look at my parents, as they walked out the front door into the dark night. They aggressively loaded up their beat-up sedan, slammed the doors, and drove off, leaving black tire marks on my driveway. The officers gave me a business card with an incident report number, firmly told me to lock all my doors and windows, and wished me a quiet, safe evening before walking back to their cruiser. Once the heavy front door clicked shut and the deadbolt slid into place, the massive house was finally truly quiet. I turned around slowly and looked at my parents. They were still sitting on the couch, looking utterly defeated, lost, and broken. My mom looked up at me with tear-stained, pleading eyes. "Preston, sweetie," she whispered, reaching a shaking hand out toward me. I reached into my leather briefcase, pulled out the second piece of paper from the manila envelope, and placed it neatly on the glass coffee table right in front of them. "I am not your sweetie," I said, my voice empty of any affection or mercy. "That is a 30-day notice to vacate. You two have exactly 1 month to find a new place to live. Thank you so much for listening to my story so far. If you are enjoying the sweet taste of justice, please drop a comment with the letter W below. W stands for win, and it lets me know you are one of the awesome listeners who stayed engaged this far into the drama. I will be personally hearting and replying to every single comment that includes the W keyword. Now, let us get back to the epic fallout. Fan 8. The parents' realization. 1480. The following morning was the quietest my house had been in over a full calendar year. I woke up in the smaller guest bedroom, feeling a strange, intoxicating mix of physical exhaustion and incredible, weightless relief. The oppressive, heavy tension that usually suffocated the air in the hallways was entirely gone. There were no loud, obnoxious video game explosions echoing from the living room television. There was no shrill, demanding voice complaining about the ambient temperature or the supposedly toxic smell of my cleaning supplies. I took a long, boiling hot shower, got dressed in comfortable clothes, and walked slowly down the wooden stairs, savoring the profound silence. However, as I approached the first floor, a smell caught my attention. The rich, savory, undeniable scent of sizzling thick-cut bacon, fresh buttermilk pancakes, and heavily brewing coffee hit my nostrils. Not the cheap, bitter instant garbage they tried to force on me the day before, but my actual expensive coffee beans. Somehow, my mother had sneaked out of the house at the crack of dawn, driven to the specialty roaster, bought a brand new bag of my specific $50 imported roast, and brewed it perfectly in my expensive machine. I walked cautiously into the bright kitchen. My mother, Rowena, was standing diligently by the hot stove, wearing a floral apron, humming a soft, cheerful tune, as if we were living in a television sitcom. The large dining table was set beautifully with the good china. There was a massive, overflowing ceramic plate of crispy bacon, a tall stack of fluffy blueberry pancakes dripping with real maple syrup, perfectly scrambled eggs, and a steaming, oversized mug of black coffee sitting right at my usual spot at the head of the table. My dad, Warren, was sitting quietly at the table, pretending to read the morning newspaper. When I walked into the room, he immediately folded the paper, put it away, and gave me a wide, overly enthusiastic, deeply unnatural smile. "Morning, son," he boomed, his voice entirely too loud for the early hour, acting as if last night's police visit and eviction notices had never happened. "Sleep well in the guest room?" My mom spun around from the stove, wiping her clean hands aggressively on a dish towel. "Preston, sit down, honey, eat while it is piping hot. I woke up early and made all your absolute favorites to start the day right." I stood motionless in the doorway, staring blankly at the extravagant breakfast feast. It was so transparent, so painfully, insultingly manipulative, that it actually made my stomach churn with nausea. Just 12 short hours ago, they were screaming in my face, trying to steal my $1 million property, calling me selfish, and literally denying me a plate of food at my own dining table. Now, with their precious golden boy exiled to a cheap motel and their own housing security directly threatened by a 30-day legal eviction notice, they were suddenly playing the desperate roles of perfect, loving, attentive parents. I walked slowly over to the table, my footsteps echoing. I looked down at the steaming plate of delicious food. Then I looked up at my mother. Her eyes were wide, desperate, and silently begging me to sit down, eat the sweet pancakes, and pretend everything was miraculously forgiven. She wanted a reset button that did not exist. I reached out with my right hand, picked up the heavy ceramic plate filled with bacon, eggs, and pancakes, and walked directly over to the stainless steel trash can in the corner. I stepped heavily on the foot pedal, the metal lid popped open, and I scraped every single ounce of the hot food directly into the garbage bag. The wet, heavy sound of the food hitting the bottom of the empty bin echoed loudly in the silent, tense kitchen. My mother let out a small, wounded gasp, taking a step back as if I had burned her. "Preston, why would you do that?" she whispered, genuine tears instantly brimming in her eyes. "I cooked that entire meal just for you." I turned slowly to face her, my expression as hard and unyielding as stone. "You only love me when the golden boy is gone and you desperately need a free roof over your heads," I said, my voice cutting through the smell of coffee like a sharp knife. "Do not ever insult my intelligence by cooking me a fake apology breakfast and acting like you care about my well-being. You do not care about me. You never have. You only care about free rent and living in luxury. If you want to eat in this house for the next 29 days, buy your own food and cook it yourselves. And do not ever touch my coffee equipment again." I grabbed my car keys off the granite counter and walked purposefully toward the front door, needing to get out of that toxic atmosphere. But before I could even grab the brass handle, someone started pounding violently on the heavy wood from the outside. It was not a polite, neighborly knock. It was the frantic, aggressive, chaotic hammering of someone looking for a physical altercation. I yanked the door open, my patience entirely depleted. Standing on my front porch, her face twisted in absolute, uncontrollable fury, was my Aunt Gemma. The ultimate flying monkey had arrived to do the queen bee's bidding. "You absolute monster!" Gemma shrieked at the top of her lungs, forcefully pushing past my shoulder and marching straight into my foyer, her heavy heels clicking angrily. "How dare you do this?" Corbin called me, crying uncontrollably at 3 in the morning. "He is sleeping in a filthy, roach-infested motel room with his pregnant wife because of your psychotic, unhinged greed." My parents rushed out of the kitchen, looking terrified of the noise. "Gemma, please, do not yell," my mom pleaded, wringing her hands nervously and looking out the window to see if the neighbors were watching. "We are trying to fix this. Quietly." Gemma completely ignored her sister. She turned her venomous, hateful glare back onto me, stepping so close I could smell the stale coffee and mints on her breath. "You think you are so powerful with your big, fancy house and your high-paying computer job?" she spat, poking a sharp, manicured finger hard into my chest. "I am going to completely destroy your life, Preston. I am going to blast your name and face all over social media. I am going to personally tag your corporate employer and tell their human resources department that you violently abuse and evict pregnant women. I will make sure the entire extended family ostracizes you forever. You will die alone, and you will deserve it." She was panting heavily, her face flushed dark red, waiting eagerly for me to break down, apologize, or beg for mercy. She fully expected me to cower the way I always did when the family ganged up on me during my childhood. Instead, I did not flinch. I casually reached into my pocket, pulled out my smartphone, and unlocked the screen with my thumb. I tapped open the Facebook app, held the bright phone up right in front of her furious, red face, and smiled warmly. "Go ahead, Gemma," I said softly, my voice dripping with dangerous confidence. "Scream all you want. Call my boss. But you might want to carefully read my Facebook page before you make your next move." Fan 9 destroying the illusion 1440 Gemma stopped her aggressive rant mid-sentence, her mouth hanging open in confusion. She squinted at my bright phone screen, unable to read the small text without her glasses, then quickly fumbled in her oversized leather purse to pull out her own phone. My parents, sensing a massive shift in the atmosphere, exchanged terrified, panicked looks and hurried over to look nervously over Gemma's shoulder as she opened her social media app. I had not been sleeping peacefully during the night. While my parents were resting and Corbin was crying in a cheap motel, I was busy flawlessly executing the final, most devastating phase of my strategy. I knew Corbin and my parents would immediately try to spin a false, victimizing narrative to the extended family. They would paint me as a greedy, psychotic, heartless villain, who threw a helpless pregnant woman onto the freezing streets for absolutely no reason other than spite. So, I decided to strike first, strike hard, and burn their false reality to the ground. At exactly 4 in the morning, I had posted a massive, meticulously detailed expose on the private extended family Facebook group, a highly active group that included over 80 cousins, aunts, uncles, and close family friends who loved to gossip. The post was a masterpiece of undeniable, brutal truth. I did not just write an emotional rant. I provided hard, physical receipts that could not be debated. First, I posted clear, high-resolution photos of the insane deed transfer document my mother tried to force me to sign, highlighting the part where they demanded my house for $0. Then, I posted verified screenshots of my bank statements, showing the $4,500 monthly mortgage payments coming directly out of my account, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that my parents contributed nothing to the estate. I posted time-stamped pictures of the ruined, juice-stained $2,000 Persian rug, and the heartbreaking photo of my $3,000 work monitors thrown carelessly face down on the hallway floor by Corbin. But the final, crushing nail in the coffin was the screenshots I had quietly acquired weeks ago. When Corbin carelessly left his tablet unlocked on the living room coffee table, I had taken clear photos of his text messages with a shady, aggressive debt collector. Turned out, Corbin was not just broke because he was down on his luck. He was over $60,000 in high-interest debt from a string of failed, illegal sports gambling bets and ridiculously shady crypto investments. His grand plan was never to secure a safe nursery for his unborn baby. His master plan, which he blatantly bragged about to his degenerate friends via text, was to manipulate his parents into forcing me to sign the house over, immediately take out a massive equity loan against the property to pay off his dangerous bookies, and leave me holding the bag while he lived the high life. As Gemma and my parents read the long post in the foyer, the blood drained entirely from their faces, leaving them looking like ghosts. The comments section under my post was already an absolute, glorious bloodbath. Uncle Robert, the wealthy patriarch of the family who usually funded family reunions, wrote, "I cannot believe Warren and Rowena actively enabled this criminal behavior. Preston, I am so incredibly sorry you endured this. Change your locks immediately, and let me know if you need a better lawyer." Cousin Sarah, who always defended Corbin, commented, "Oh my God. Corbin literally tried to borrow $5,000 from me last month, claiming it was for emergency medical bills for the baby. He is a total fraud. Do not let any of them back in your house." Even the distant family friends were expressing absolute horror. The impenetrable golden child illusion was completely, permanently shattered. The carefully crafted facade of the perfect, loving, supportive family had been violently ripped away, exposing the rotten, toxic, parasitic core underneath for everyone to see. Gemma stared blankly at her phone, her hands shaking so violently she almost dropped the device. She looked slowly up at me, then looked with pure disgust at my parents. Corbin has massive gambling debt?" she asked, her loud voice suddenly small, weak, and trembling. "He actively wanted to steal your equity to pay off bookies? And you two knew he was broke and still tried to force Preston to give him the house?" I did not have to say a single word in my defense. The heavy, suffocating silence in the room was deafening. Gemma did not yell anymore. She did not threaten my job. She turned around, walked out the open front door, and got into her car without saying goodbye to her sister. She knew she had backed the wrong horse, and she was terrified of the family backlash. The entire family knew the truth now. Once the door clicked closed behind Gemma, the crushing reality of the situation finally crashed down on my parents with the weight of a freight train. The thick wall of denial vanished entirely. They were totally exposed to the entire family as blind enablers who tried to help one son rob the other son blind. They had instantly lost their prestigious social standing, they had lost their perfect golden boy, and they were about to lose their free, luxurious housing. My father, the proud, stubborn man who had yelled in my face and arrogantly demanded I share my hard-earned wealth, physically collapsed onto his knees right in the middle of the foyer. He put his weathered face in his hands and started sobbing. Deep, ugly, chest-heaving sobs that echoed off the high ceiling. My mother fell to the floor right next to him, grabbing the hem of my pants, her hot tears soaking into the fabric. "Preston, please," she wailed, her voice echoing with raw, unfiltered panic. "Please. We are so incredibly sorry. We did not know the full extent of his terrible debt. I swear on my life we did not know he was gambling. We were just trying to help him survive. You cannot kick us out. We sold our old house. We have nowhere else to go. Our small pensions are not nearly enough to rent a nice, safe place in the city. Please, I am begging you on my hands and knees, tear up that 30-day notice. We will do anything you ask." I looked down at the two people who raised me, the people who intentionally ignored my college graduation, constantly dismissed my hard work, and tried to aggressively strip me of my life savings just to coddle my abuser. Seeing them crying pathetically on my expensive floors did not make me feel powerful or victorious. It just made me feel an overwhelming sense of profound, hollow sadness for what could have been. I took a slow step back, gently but firmly pulling my pant leg out of my mother's desperate, grasping grip. "Get up off the floor," I said, my voice tired but commanding. "Have some basic dignity. We need to go into the living room and have a serious business meeting, because things are going to change drastically in this house." Fan 10 The ultimate power shift and conclusion 1480 My parents slowly picked themselves up off the hardwood floor, wiping their tear-streaked, red faces, looking like deflated balloons that had all the air sucked out of them. They followed me silently, heads bowed, into the living room and sat tentatively on the very edge of the leather couch, perching awkwardly like they were terrified the cushions would swallow them whole if they relaxed. I did not sit down with them. I stood tall in front of the massive stone fireplace, looking down at them, firmly establishing the brand new hierarchy of the household. I was no longer the invisible, neglected child desperately begging for their scraps of approval. I was the homeowner, the landlord, and the one holding all the cards. They were merely the tenants begging for mercy. "I am not going to throw you out onto the street," I said slowly, letting the heavy words sink in and fill the room. My mom let out a massive, shuddering sigh of relief and immediately reached her arms out as if to hug me, but I held up a flat hand, stopping her dead in her tracks. "I said I am not throwing you out," I continued, my voice hardening into steel. "But you are no longer living here as my honored, respected guests. The free ride is permanently, unequivocally over. If you want to stay under my roof, you will stay under my specific, strict rules, and you will sign a legally binding contract to prove it." I walked over to my leather briefcase resting by the door and pulled out a thick, multi-page, standard residential lease agreement. I had printed it off the internet the night before and heavily modified the clauses for this exact, twisted scenario. I placed it squarely on the glass coffee table, along with a black ballpoint pen. "Here are my absolutely unnegotiable terms," I stated, looking my dad directly in his red, puffy eyes. "First, you will pay rent every single month. $1,500 a month, due on the first day of every month, paid directly from your combined retirement pensions. That payment covers your 2 bedrooms and your fair share of the utility bills. If you are late, you incur fees." My dad swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, and nodded quickly. "Yes, that is completely fair. We can easily manage that amount." "Second," I said, ticking the rule off on my fingers, "I am no longer your personal, free grocery store. You will buy your own food with your own money, cook your own meals, and clean up your own messes immediately. You do not ever touch my premium coffee, my expensive steaks, or my personal cleaning supplies. We share the fridge space exactly 50-50, and you respect my personal property at all times. Yes, Preston, we promise, we will not touch anything," my mom whispered, staring blankly at her lap, unable to meet my gaze. "Third, and this is the most critical rule of all," I leaned forward, resting my knuckles heavily on the glass table to ensure they felt the absolute gravity of my words. "Corbin and Sloan are permanently, legally banned from stepping foot on this property. They do not get a spare key. They do not come over for casual Sunday dinners. They do not cross the threshold of my front door or walk onto my driveway for the rest of their natural lives. If I come home from work one day and see their beat-up car parked outside, or find them sitting in my living room, this lease is instantly terminated, and you will both have 3 days to pack your bags and get out." My mom let out a choked, painful sob, covering her mouth. "But Preston, the baby is coming. We want to be able to see our first grandchild. Then you can get in your car and drive to whatever cheap motel or rented room they end up living in," I replied coldly, feeling zero sympathy for her tears. "But they do not step foot on my soil. Ever again. I will call the police for trespassing the second I see their faces. Those are my terms. Sign the contract right now or start packing your boxes." My parents looked down at the harsh, unforgiving legal document sitting on the table. They realized in that exact painful moment that they had profoundly lost something they could never, ever get back. They had permanently lost their loving, accommodating, generous son. In his place was a cold, calculating businessman who only communicated through contracts, boundaries, and financial leverage. With shaking, trembling hands, my father picked up the black pen and signed his name on the dotted line. My mother took the pen next, crying silently, tears dropping onto the paper as she signed away her entitlement and agreed to my terms. Over the next few weeks, the dynamic in the house shifted entirely. My parents paid their rent exactly on time. They quietly bought their own cheap groceries, cooked their meals when I was not in the kitchen, and kept strictly to themselves in their rooms. They were unfailingly polite, overly cautious, and constantly walked on eggshells around me, terrified of breaking the lease. As for me, I hired a professional cleaning crew to deep clean the ruined carpet in the master bedroom, and I spent a deeply satisfying weekend putting my home office back together exactly the way I wanted it, complete with my dual monitors and my custom chair. The story ends on a quiet, peaceful Tuesday evening. I was sitting in my custom ergonomic chair, my monitors glowing brightly in front of me, sipping a perfect cup of $50 imported coffee. The house was dead silent. But this time, the silence did not feel oppressive. It did not feel like I was being isolated or ignored by a family that favored my brother. It felt like absolute, unadulterated respect. I had fought brutally for my peace, I had defended my fortress against invaders, and I had finally won. So, Reddit, I turn the final verdict over to you, the jury. Was I too harsh by making my elderly parents sign a strict legal lease and pay rent to live in my house? Did I go overboard by banning my own brother and his pregnant wife from my property forever? Or did they get exactly the brutal reality check they desperately needed after years of taking advantage of me? Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this epic tale of family drama and satisfying justice, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button. Give this video a massive thumbs up and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on more crazy Reddit stories. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share if you have ever dealt with a golden child in your own family, and I will see you all in the next video.